Okay, so you know how in sitcoms there's always that one episode where the writers were like, we need to keep this really, really low budget, so everything is going to take place in one setting, and we're gonna have like a very, very simple plot. So like a bottle episode, I think is what they're called. That's pretty much what I'm doing today because whatever idea I had for today, I'm just not where I'm supposed to be for it. So instead, I am going to ramble about my favorite movies as a certified film bro in training. I want to say this is in no particular order. I don't Actually, I do have a favorite genre. I can't lie. You'll notice really quickly. So some of them are favorite movies in terms of like comfort, where I'm like, this is a movie I just watch over and over and over and over again. And then some other ones I've only seen once and I just think about over and over and over again. Especially because some of these movies I think would be too emotionally taxing for me to watch multiple times. I don't think it would be healthy. Okay, I'm gonna start with the stuff that's not in my top four on letterboxd, but I am going to begin with Coraline. Funny story about this movie. I absolutely hated and was terrified of it the first time I watched it when I was 5 years old. I rewatched it at like 10 years old or something, and I just hyper fixated on it. Really quickly, let me give a log line for those of us who aren't familiar. And if you aren't familiar, that's just sad. Wandering her rambling old house in her boring new town, an 11-year-old Coraline discovers a hidden door to a strangely idealized version of her life. In order to stay in the fantasy, she must make a frighteningly real sacrifice. One of the reasons I absolutely love this movie is the animation style. I love Leica so much, and I love claymation style movies, and I wish more people made them, but I realized how difficult, how long it takes to like literally make the puppets, first of all, but also to move the puppets for every single frame. And it's so impressive to see how they make all these backgrounds and all these characters. Like, this movie is one of the most impressive, like visually animated, like things I've ever seen in my entire life. But also just the story. As like a 10-year-old, I just found Coraline very relatable, even though I don't think my parents were as neglectful as her parents in the movie. And yeah, highly recommend even for an adult. Next movie on my list, another coming of age story, After Sun. And can I just say, not only for a debut, but like just in general for the film, wow. Like, insane. If you're not familiar with After Sun, the logline says, Sophie reflects on the shared joy and private melancholy of a holiday she took with her father 20 years earlier. Memories, real and imagined, fill the gaps between as she tries to reconcile the father she knew with the man she didn't. This movie is kind of sad and kind of not boring. It's not boring. I love the movie, but it's one of those like nothing happens type like neo-realist style movies, where like the plot is just like a bunch of tiny little events happening. It's all her memories, so we don't know what's real and what's fabricated because she's a child during this trip and she's an adult when the story is being told, so we don't know how much is actually accurate and if her memory of her father is kind of um muddled, if that makes sense. Hello, editing Jenny. I don't know why I was having so much trouble explaining this, but I was saying that the reason that they use the sort of nothing happens format is because her memories are very fragmented, because that's what happens when you get older. You forget more and more about what happened. And that's all she remembers from that vacation. She can't remember like a whole seamless movie length story of her vacation. There's so many things that stand out in this movie. Like, it's not just the visuals, but also I think the writing is very, very clever and feels so real for an 11-year-old girl. I know dramas aren't like everybody's thing, but I think this is one I would just recommend for people who are just like, "Ooh, I don't like dramas. I don't like melodramas. They're so, like this movie actually invokes such strong feelings of nostalgia in me, even though I never went on like vacations like that alone with my father, but I love the movie so much. So also highly recommend this one. Okay, shifting gears away from coming of age for like preteens and more coming of age in adulthood stories, I highly, highly, highly recommend the film All About My Mother. Here's the log line for this movie: a comedy drama about a bereaved mother, an overwrought actress, her jealous lover, and a pregnant nun. The thing is, the movie, there's a lot going on, and somehow it doesn't feel too fast paced and like my brain is going crazy. I don't want to spoil too much about this movie because I feel like the log line captures it pretty well, but standout things for me for the movie is the themes about motherhood and sisterhood. I'm a sucker for any story like that. Like one of my favorite movies slash books is Little Women. So like I just love seeing women womaning, and I love to see sisters sistering and mothers mothering. And it's honestly a classic to me. So highly recommend. Okay, now here's one of those movies that I've only seen once and I don't go back to rewatch. This one isn't like I don't go back to rewatch because it's too emotionally draining for me. I think about a lot of like topics about real life when I watch this movie that are just so hard to swallow because it came out in 1989 and I feel like there's just not a lot of progress that's been made. And that movie is Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing. Hey, editing me is back. For some reason, the clip did not get saved of me reading the log line, so gonna do that right now for the movie. So the story explores a Brooklyn neighborhood simmering racial tensions between its African American residents and the Italian American owners of a local pizzeria, culminating in tragedy and violence on a hot summer's day. I also think this movie is Spike Lee at his best, okay? Like everything about this movie, the editing, the composition, everything not only feels so intense and suspenseful and suffocating because of the hot weather and the Dutch like Dutch angles and all of that stuff, but it feels so like you're there. You are, it feels like summer every time you watch that movie. I could be The first time I watched this was like 22 degrees in Connecticut, and I was just like, whoa, I'm feeling the heat. I don't want to spoil too much. I was gonna get a little too into it, but highly recommend the film. Not even recommend, just watch it immediately. If there's one you haven't seen right now, watch it right now. And I'm pretty sure it's streaming. And if not, just rent the movie. It's cheap. Heavily shifting gears. The next on my list is the Lego movie. I just want to say the Lego movie. Hear me out. Hear me out. I think this is one of the funniest movies to ever exist, and I think it is one of the best adaptations of George Orwell's 1984. And you're like, hold on, what? Like what? 1984? Yes, yes. If you don't see the similarities, you're tripping because this movie is so smart, especially for a family slash kids movie about toys. Like I'm not trying to be that person, but they do it better than Barbie, okay? This is the better toy movie. Barbie is also great, but this is the better toy movie. And it's hilarious. Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, they they just get me like on a spiritual level. No movies make me laugh harder than the movies that these two write and direct. Um, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, 21 Jump Street. They know me. They understand. And I also just think this movie was made for me specifically. Came out on one of my childhood birthdays. Fate. Literally fate. So, oh, if you're not familiar somehow, I'll give you the log line. An ordinary Lego construction worker, thought to be the prophesized as the special, is recruited to join a quest to stop an evil tyrant from gluing the Lego universe into internal stasis. I mean, what more can I say? Okay, last quick thing about this movie. Also look up how this was animated, because this is also one of the ones where I'm like, this is so impressive. A whole movie animated with Legos. Just saying. Heavily shifting gears again. We are moving to another one of my all-time favorites that I've seen too many times for my own good, and is one of the only movies that I have purchased on iTunes, and that is When Harry Met Sally. So, for context, if you don't understand how much I really do love this movie and find so much comfort in it, I did my final in one of my classes this past semester on Nora Ephron's career and impact on the rom-com assance. This movie is the best. Is it the best? I think it is the best rom-com I've ever seen. It is the cream of the crop, okay? If you're unfamiliar with When Harry Met Sally, it is a 1989 rom-com written by Nora Ephron and directed by Rob Reiner, and it is about Harry and Sally, who've known each other for years and are very good friends, but they fear sex would ruin the friendship. Very simple, very, very simple. But I think what I really like about Nora Ephron's writing is that she's thinking about women. And I think that makes a huge difference from when I watch a rom-com that's written by a man versus one written by a woman. I still enjoy plenty of rom-coms written by men because I really, really love rom-coms. But there's something about Sally's character and her dynamic with Harry specifically in their friendship that feels so much more relatable than other protagonists I've seen in rom-coms. Also, I'd like to add, I every time I watch this movie, I can't decide if the protagonist is Harry or Sally. Like it changes every single time just because the character study she does for both of them is just so effective. You see so much growth in both of them. Last one I'm going to talk about before I do my top four is the latest release of all of these, and it is the 2023 teen comedy Bottoms. Bottoms follows two unpopular queer high school students who start a fight club to have sex before graduation. I feel like this logline makes it a lot weirder than it actually no, it is really weird, but this is what I've been missing from like movies recently. This movie is so fun. It's literally just such a fun time. It's not only hilarious, the writing, but the performances are amazing. The colors, it's so vibrant. Like, why are movies so dull now? Like this feels like I see color and I'm instantly happy. Like that's how I feel when I watch this movie. This movie is just a ton of fun. It's ridiculous, it's nonsensical, it's unserious, but it's perfect in every way to me. Okay, it's time to look at my honorable mentions before the top four. So those include Whisper of the Heart, The Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, Crazy Stupid Love, and childhood fave, The Sound of Music. Once again, this is in no particular order. These are just the top four on my profile. But first, I'm going to talk about the movie that I've seen more than any movie I've seen in my entire life, I fear, and that is 10 Things I Hate About You. This film, it's about a high school boy, Cameron, cannot date Bianca until her antisocial older sister Kat has a boyfriend. So Cameron pays a mysterious boy, Patrick, to charm Kat. Now, if that plot sounds familiar to you at all, it's because it's a modern adaptation of the Shakespeare play titled The Taming of the Shrew. So it's not unusual for Hollywood to adapt Shakespeare plays. We've seen so many of Twelfth Night, Romeo and Juliet, Much Ado About Nothing, Midsummer's Night Dream. I feel like I said that correctly. But this is the Holy Grail, and I have seen quite a few of these movies, to be honest. Like other modern retellings, it commonly throws in some of Shakespeare's like actual quotes like from the original play into the movie, but they do it in such a clever and cheeky way that I find it super hilarious every single time. When you think of a 2000s teen or 90s teen movie, this is exactly what my brain thinks of. It doesn't feel real at all. Like it doesn't feel like real high school, but it once again creates like this kind of high school world that is so fun to be immersed in as an audience member. And it also just has a very cute love story. I love the love story in this movie. Okay, next, a very, very different movie and the newest addition, I would say, to my top four letterbox roster, and that is Thelma and Louise. Now, this movie is like no other chase I've seen ever. To be fair, though, I think the only movie that I've seen like this is Bonnie and Clyde, but this trumps it in every single way, and Bonnie and Clyde is a great movie. So, if you don't know what Thelma and Louise is about, two best friends set out on an adventure, but it soon turns around to a terrifying escape from being hunted by the police as these two women escape for the crimes they committed. Based on that, literally think as crazy as like what crimes they could have committed. Like just like let your imagination run wild. Think of the craziest scenarios possible. That is this movie. This movie also is just so intense, so thrilling. I feel like a new woman every single time I watch this. The first time I watched this, I was on a freaking airplane and I was just like, I feel so liberated and free. And I'm literally sobbing. And why was I crying at the end of this movie? I do definitely don't want to spoil anything for this movie because you have to see it for yourself. But also, if you want to see young Brad Pitt, good reason to watch the movie. Next one on here is rough. Okay, like this one is so hard to rewatch and is so emotional, but is the most beautiful movie I've ever seen, and that is Moonlight. I won't lie, I've only seen this movie once, but I do vividly remember how I felt while watching the movie and after the movie because I cry at movies a lot, but I've never cried as much as I did after watching this movie. It was literally like for a good hour. Like there were, but I was crying throughout. Jenkins is so good at using visual storytelling to make the audience really squirm and cry and mourn and feel so connected to these characters that they might have never like witnessed in real life. So it's about a young African American man grappling with his identity and sexuality while experiencing the everyday struggles of childhood, adolescence, and burgeoning adulthood. It's a really smart coming of age story because it's one of those movies where you follow the character from like a super, super young age into adulthood. So it's not like one of the coming of age stories where you're just seeing like one section of his life. You see three different parts of the main character's life and how much he changes in each one. And I think I remember like experiencing so much shock when you see like that final transition. I just would have to say watch at your own risk because I know that some of the scenes might be triggering for some people, and it is, like I said, it's an emotional, not roller coaster, it's just like literally like a drop, like it's literally just dropping the entire time. It hurts, but it's so worth it. There's a reason it's in my top four. Okay, for my last one, my very last one, I'm not saying this is number one. Like I said, this is in no particular order. I love all these movies the same amount. But this one, I feel like so silly talking about directly after Moonlight. And I understand the irony of having both in my top four. It's literally in my letterboxd bio. But the reveal is La La Land. So this is a dramedy slash musical. And it is everything I ever ask for in a movie. Beautiful color, amazing music. I love musicals. Emma Stone, Ryan Gosling, Damien Chazelle, um, Los Angeles, everything, literally everything. Every time I watch this movie, I feel so much like serotonin just like instantly being released. While navigating their careers in Los Angeles, a pianist and an actress fall in love while attempting to reconcile their aspirations for their future. And if you are in any position similar to these people, creatives or whatever, really struggling to make a name for yourself, this one might hurt just a little bit, just a little bit. Now, for context, this is my airplane movie, so I watch this every single time I leave Los Angeles, and it hurts a lot because the opening sequence is literally just in freeway traffic and everybody breaks into a dance number, and that never happens in real life. But I suddenly feel very um I mourn the loss of that traffic, that morning traffic. I really do. I'm like, I want to be there right now. I want to be in the hot sun and sing about another day of sun because that is Los Angeles. I sound so ridiculous right now. I got cut off for the last time, but I was rambling. I don't need to talk about this too much. All I have to say is watch this, and this is exactly the kind of movie I want to make. So after you watch this, be on the lookout for me in a good 10 years when I make the not La La Land sequel, but something equivalent, like stylistically. Is that the word stylistically? I don't know.